I'd like to bring the meeting of December 8th to order and asking if anybody besides LCAT is recording this.
Shirley Tancredi for the minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to review and approve the minutes of November 25th.
So moved.
Second.
You got a second? Okay.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Review and approve the minutes of the executive session of November 25th.
So moved.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. At this point, we're going to turn it over to the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. This evening, just have myself and Mr. Fenney here, so he and I will be splitting responsibilities in terms of presentations. First thing I wanted to cover was the monthly budget review, and really just make the point that the budget is trending very similar to what it has trended in previous months. We're tracking very well against budget as well as very well against last year in most areas. There are two areas that are somewhat higher. One is the utilities budget. We are still within budget at this point, but we are tracking a little bit higher than last year. And then in the waste budget, which is the transfer station budget, we are higher than last year and higher than budget at this point. And we are really doing two things. One thing that Mr. Fenney will be talking about relative to utilities in terms of trying to take a look at where we're spending money and trying to find ways to save money while we're still early enough in the year that we don't run into any problems. On the waste budget, really, there's two things that we're doing right now. We're looking at other divisions in terms of how they utilize that waste budget, right, and in terms of what is fair and reasonable in terms of sharing those costs. We are also looking at potentially other haulers, other disposal firms. We haven't had a lot of success yet. We have reached out to a couple of companies. But one alternative that I'm starting to look at right now is, perhaps having ourselves, haul with our own vehicles if we had to. Right now, a significant cost is just getting the waste material from the transfer station out of here, and if we're willing to do the transport, might that open up some opportunities to us that don't currently exist.
We currently give away those medals.
We do. The medals are handled at no cost to us, nor no revenue to the town. At certain types of metals, there very likely is revenue that can be gained through the metals. Other types of revenues where you have other types of metals, there may not be any revenue to be realized. So it's simpler to have it all washed right now, but that's something we need to look at. Is if we have a significant quantity of cast iron, for instance, that we're going to be recycling, if we haul it to another location, we may be able to realize the revenue versus having it hauled away from here and not incurring any cost, but not also incurring any revenue. So we have to look closer. That is really what my message is, to try to find a smarter way to operate that facility at as low of a cost as we can.
Right.
And that may require that we do some things differently and take on a greater responsibility in terms of getting waste material from the transfer station to locations where either we pay to dispose of it, or perhaps locations where we might realize some revenue from the disposal. So as I said, the trends are good. In all the other divisions, we are below budget. We are in just about every other case below where we were last year as well. The next item I wanted to mention was crack sealing activities. As I understand it, the town has not done crack sealing for several years, so myself and primarily Dan Murphy, the town engineer, put together a request for quotes from several companies, and we really looked at crack sealing on a trial basis late in this year to try to get a sense of where does it make sense, where can it get done cost effectively. And as a result of that, over the past couple of weeks, we did crack seal about 7,300 feet of Summers Road, both sides of Summers Road. We sealed Maple Street from Savoy towards the Long Meadow line. There were a couple of fairly significant significant longitudinal cracks that were fairly easy to seal, and the rest of the road is in very good shape, but we had a couple of significant cracks there. We also spent some time in North Main Street, primarily
I saw you on North Main Street doing
from Westport up to Dearborn.
Yep.
And then there's an area in front of Stop and Shop that we did not seal because there was a lot of defects there, to the point where for crack sealing, you pay based on the volume of product that you put in the cracks, and if your cracks are too numerous per
Elevated
foot of the
crack,
roadway,
yeah.
it becomes fairly costly to crack seal. Ideally, you find a roadway that's in good shape with not a lot of density of cracks, so you can spend a small amount of money and help to extend the life of the roadway.
I understand.
So I think we're heading in the right direction. I think it's worked out well. We learned a little bit about areas, for instance, on Summers Road, where there are probably a couple of areas where we could have backed away from crack sealing because we ended up using a lot of product on a very short amount of roadway. And in the future, we'd look at trying to pick some areas where we could stretch that volume further. Another item that Mr. Murphy has been working on is reimbursement from the Federal Highway Administration for storm cleanup after the October 29th, 2011 storm. As the board is aware, we did apply for and receive reimbursement from FEMA for the majority of the cleanup activities that the DPW did following the October 29th storm. But there is another opportunity for reimbursement for what are referred to as federal aid roads, which are not state highways, but they're roadways that are many, many years ago were identified within the federal system as being roadways that are eligible for federal funding reimbursement on. And as a result of that, the federal government, separate from FEMA, is willing to reimburse the cost of cleanup on those roadways. And it's largely what we think of as our main roadways. And it's, you know, it's a fairly long list. It's Allen Street, Chestnut, Denslow, Elm, Hamden. Interesting, and this is a little not as obvious, Kensington and Lombard and Vineland.
Yeah.
Because apparently, and this probably goes back 50+ years, that appeared to be sort of a main corridor, you know, on that section on the northwest end of the town. If you were going to move traffic through that area, that would likely be the roadway that you would take. Maple Street, Maple Shade, Markham, as you know, just as a small cut through. Meadowbrook, North Main Street, Parker, Pease, Pleasant, Porter, Prospect, Shaker, Summers, and Westwood. All total, the expenditures that we had on those roads were about $190,000, including outside disposal costs, contractors that we hired to assist us in the cleanup and the grinding activity, and our own in-house costs. And we're probably a day or two away from having all that paperwork put together. It gets submitted to Mass DOT because the Federal Highway Administration money gets funneled through Mass DOT, but it is actually federal money that pays for the reimbursement.
Okay.
And based on our discussions with the folks at Mass DOT, they are pretty optimistic that we'd be receiving reimbursement on the range of what we're speaking for. So it's been out there for a long time, but
And that'll come back to the general fund?
that would come back to the general fund because that's where the expenses were incurred out of.
Yep.
Another item we've been focusing on, primarily Mr. Mayor Randy over the past couple of weeks, is that the money that we receive from the state, primarily through the gas tax money, the Chapter 90 funding, which funds the majority of our road maintenance activities, one of the primary factors that they look at is the road miles of accepted streets within the town. And as we looked at the list that Mass DOT had for total miles of accepted streets, it seemed low to us. So we've been going systematically through their list and our list, and thus far Frank has identified about 3 miles of additional streets that were not on the Mass DOT list.
So that would bring our Chapter 90 money up.
That would help to bring in. That would be about, you know, a 2 to 3% increase, which,
Yeah.
you know, is real money.
Oh, yeah.
And we continue to look at further. So we've gone through the lists to identify the streets that they did not have listed at all. Our next step is we have to go street by street to compare their road miles to our road miles and see if maybe there's something missing from their database.
Right, some street extensions or something like
Correct,
that.
correct. And the key being that these streets all have to be streets that have been accepted by the town, accepted at town meeting, in order to qualify for Chapter 90 funding. So we're working away at that, trying to, again, make our cases as strong as we can relative to Chapter 90 funding. The next item I wanted to bring to the board's attention, and there's a handout here, that's a tabulation of the bids that came in on the II rehabilitation project that we had bid originally a couple of months ago. And at that point, we only had a single bidder, and the bid price came in probably 50% higher than we were expecting. We spoke to a couple of potential bidders. We were able to help resolve some questions that they had regarding what the scope of work was. For instance, one of the significant items that was very costly was, as originally written, the contractors had to bypass pump flow through the sewer lines when they were repairing the manholes. They basically had to set up a pump and run from manhole to manhole to manhole, and it involves a lot of equipment, it involved a lot of rental costs, and added quite a bit to the cost of the project. We went back, we took a look at it, we found another way to do it where bypass pumping wouldn't be required. We also were able to get additional competition. We had a total of 3 bids this time as opposed to a single bid the first time. The low bid came in at $76,667. The high bid,
$77?
$76,677. And the high bid came in at $96,000 even. All of them within the budget that we had allocated for this project. Tonight, I'm not recommending award at this point because we received these bids on Friday and we want to do a little bit more work in terms of vetting the bids and the contractor qualifications. But I would expect at the next board meeting to be making a recommendation regarding award of this contract. Again, the good news is that all the bids this time came in right where we expected them to be, if not a little bit below where we expected. The next item I had is the annual budgeting process. We are just starting that at this point. As the board knows, the Appropriations Committee had a meeting last week where they basically laid out the ground rules to all the town departments. My timeline, to make you aware of, is that it's my goal to have a draft budget to you by the next board meeting, which is the 22nd of December. So that then the operating budget can be finalized by the first week in January. We have a deadline of January 13th to get the operating budget submittal to the Appropriations Committee. So in order to give the Board of Public Works one meeting to take a look at the draft of the budget and then a second meeting to finalize the budget. Again, tentatively looking to present the draft to you on the 22nd and then the final version to you the first week in January once we set a meeting date.
Okay. So we should see the rough draft in the next meeting?
That's correct. The next item I wanted to recap just for a moment, the site visit that we had last week to the Altus Solar Facility in Hamden. Myself and several other DPW employees as well as the board toured the facility, which is now under construction at this point. It looks like they're making good progress.
It does.
And based on everything we heard from the developer, they expect to have their piece of the project done by their deadline, which is the end of February of 2015. At this point, they're not certain whether or not the off-site improvements that National Grid and Verizon have to complete will be in place soon enough to actually turn the switch on the facility, but the panels will be fully installed, it will be fully operational and ready to be activated early in 2015. Next item I wanted to mention, and this is one that we'll be talking about again in the future, which is Fenway Lane, which is currently an unaccepted street. The planning board has voted to retain the remaining bond amount on that project from the project developer. And where we would go from this point is that over the next month or two, we'll be developing a plan for using those funds to upgrade the existing roadway, essentially to extend the life of the roadway. The roadway is constructed, it has been paved. However, there are some deficiencies we think that will shorten the life of the roadway, and our goal is to use the remaining funds to be able to extend their life of the roadway to what we would have expected, to potentially be in a position to accept the roadway at town meeting next year. The board's involvement in this is that after we develop the plan for improving the roadway, we will bring it back to the board. Would ask the board to endorse that, and then the planning board and town council has asked that ultimately, before we move forward with any type of expenditure of these private funds, that the board basically agree formally to accept responsibility for administering the expenditure of those funds. So it's really clear, you know,
They want us to oversee it
Correct.
to completion.
and be the board or be the party on behalf of the town that oversees the work. Let's see, two other items. I did want to mention our Thanksgiving storm response. I think generally I believe we did a pretty good job responding to the Thanksgiving storm, or the pre-Thanksgiving storm. Did want to note that we did make some decisions to try to reduce overtime costs as much as we can. We had essentially all the staff off the roadway by midnight on Wednesday, which meant we had staff working at time and a half as opposed to working into the holiday at double time. We also made a concerted decision not to bring staff in to do things like cleaning up the school parking lots and things like that to get ready for Monday until Saturday of that week, which again kept us off holiday time and avoided paying the additional premium to work on a Thursday or Friday holiday of that week. So we're making decisions where we can. Sometimes we don't have that ability.
Right, we don't always have that option.
But where we have the ability, making decisions to try to spend.
Making wise decisions.
Correct. Last item we mentioned at the last meeting was that our staff Christmas dinner is scheduled for the 12th, this Friday afternoon. And I believe we agreed at the last board meeting to have our next meeting on the 22nd.
Correct.
With that,
So at this point, we'll turn it over to Mr. Feeney from the Building Facilities.
Okay, we have a few items for the board this evening. Tennis court lighting project at the high school. I did speak with Sam Pizzanelli from the Tennis Association. They have signed a purchase agreement with Musco Lighting for all 8 light poles over at the high school. We will be ordering those, or he'll be ordering those after the first of the year. Our intent is to install them mid-March, and they're supposed to have a dedication ceremony scheduled for May 16th of the springtime. So that project will be moving forward after the long winter months. Meadowbrook electrical usage report. We did receive our data logger last week. Our town electrician has installed that on the main service over at that facility to monitor what's going on over there as far as our increased usage. So we put it on the main service as of last Friday. The unit will be running for roughly 7 days. We will then take that information on a flash drive, download it onto my computer, see what our peak usage is, and kind of see what's happening over at that facility. After we put that onto the main service, we will subsequently be putting it onto the 11 additional circuits, the branch wiring portion of that building, and monitor those for a good amount of days, and actually see which legs of the building we are getting the spikes at, where our most usage is, and see if we can identify the problem areas and what's going on.
Pinpoint it?
Yeah, so it's gonna take a
Are we still
little,
having the problem?
yes, yeah.
And they're running 30% over?
1/3 over. Yeah, we're about 100,000 kilowatts per hour over, I believe, from past years. So like I said, I reached out National Grid. They still have not checked the meter. I know they did have problems with the meter, so I'm waiting to hear back from them, and obviously continue on to monitor the power over there and see if we can put an eye on what's going on. So it's going to take a little bit of time to have this data logger find out what's going on, unless something obviously jumps out at us that we can identify. But the electrician is out there seeing what he could do with this new system we have.
we timed the installation on the main service to give us at least a week where our data logger was running concurrent with the billing period. And in theory, that should allow us to compare our numbers versus what our bill is for the month and see, maybe in fact it's a metering problem. If we
Right.
can't, if our numbers match National Grid, then we have greater reliability. The problem is inside the school as opposed to a
Right.
metering problem
Right.
inside the school.
And that would help obviously tell us if there's something wrong with the meter, so it'll help us in all our buildings in the future. Another item for the board this evening is the Mountain View swing set. The PTO purchased a swing set, quite a large swing set over at Mountain View School. It's roughly 60 feet long. It's a 4-bay swing set with 8 swings. The DPW installed this in roughly about 3 days the previous week. This included assembling the swing set, new concrete footings, new play chips throughout, underneath, and around the swing set, obviously for safety of the kids. Roughly about 8 inches of those wood chips were installed. Total price for the wood chips are about $1,100. We did reach out to the school department and the PTO. They will be taking care of that bill for us. So we've been working together with them, and they actually took some pictures. I don't know what they plan on doing with them. We did receive a kind of a thank you email today with the pictures attached, so hats off to the guys that did a great job out there, especially in the cold weather.
Should we post them on our website?
Yeah,
Or a link to it, sure.
Yeah.
Link to it.
I'll reach out to Elaine, see if they plan on doing something. Maybe they're already going to be putting it onto the school website, but absolutely.
And I think it was just reinforcing a good team effort. You know, we primarily provided the labor. The PTO purchased the spring set, and the school ultimately paid for the wood chips. So all
That's the
three
way it's
parties put
supposed to
something
work.
into it.
Yeah. Something out, obviously, that isn't planned on as far as our maintenance budget. Another item for the board, our Impulse work order system for the building maintenance portion, and we're kind of using that as our vehicle maintenance software. I've been looking on upgrading that version to version 7. We are currently on version 6. I looked at it for a few hours last week, so I'm kind of familiarizing myself with that system. We don't necessarily have to go with the new version, but I'm trying to look to obviously keep that software up to date. I have been working with Mr. Langoni, trying to get a PM kind of schedule put into that system for all our vehicles. I kind of have a rough idea of what we're going to put in there. I just got to spend some time with Mr. Langoni and get that done. But in the meantime, he has come up with a daily maintenance sheet for all the vehicles, kind of a checklist that operators and all the foremen and all the guys will be responsible for, hopefully in the near future. Going through the vehicle, checking off certain safety things that go along with those vehicles, any repairs, and kind of documenting what's going on with each and every vehicle.
The key there, and we haven't done this for some time as I understand it, is really making someone accountable for every vehicle. So from a daily inspection, from a daily servicing standpoint, because the mechanics can't have responsibility for the overall
No.
vehicle. So the operators are each going to have 2 vehicles, 2 of the heavy pieces of heavy equipment, whether it's a backhoe or a loader. Each of them will be responsible for whether they're using it that day or not, doesn't really matter. It's their vehicle to make certain it's fueled, it's lubricated, the lights work, everything.
Accountability.
Correct.
Yeah,
And then
I
our
agree.
goal is to roll that out to the other pieces of equipment as well.
yeah.
And when will you implement that?
We're going to implement it soon. I'm actually going to meet with the foremen and operators in the morning, because we do have a foreman's meeting in the morning. So in that probably 15-minute period, the operators and all the guys can get out to those vehicles, the vehicles they're assigned, do a check, safety check, make sure things are greased and lubed and filled up, make sure the cab is clean. So kind of just trying to reinforce that these vehicles are obviously
It's a housekeeping
vital to the
policy.
operations, you know,
Right.
and things
So
not being
you'll have
down.
this implemented this
Right.
week?
Right, because sometimes you meet in the yard, you say, you know, talk to the mechanics, this is broken, that's broken, and it never gets documented. So it's kind of just putting that, putting something forward so you have it on a piece of paper so it doesn't get lost in the mix.
So we'll get it implemented this week?
Yes.
The
yes.
heavy equipment this week, what I
Heavy
wanted to do is I
equipment.
wanted to start with 6 pieces of equipment
I
first.
understand.
And then build from there.
Okay,
So
So-
within a week or two, I'd expect to
Yeah.
be rolling it out to everything.
to everything, but
Yeah.
this week you're gonna introduce it,
Yep, tomorrow morning, actually.
that's great.
So, and like I said, the PM portion, Mark's gonna actually get that together for me hopefully tomorrow and start entering some of the PM work as far as inspection stickers, semi-annual inspections, annual inspections for all the pieces of equipment. So
Okay.
we're gonna be getting that in the system.
And we have been using the, I'm blanking out the name. The
Impulse.
Impulse system for tracking vehicle costs.
Yes.
And we've been doing that for probably 6 to 9 months right
Mhm.
now.
Okay.
Where every invoice, every expense that we
Yep.
incur is all tracked and maintained within the system, so we can document that.
So we'll be able to show capital,
Yep.
look, we're spending way too much money on these particular vehicles.
Yep.
These
You can run a
things
report on each
need to go.
vehicle, all the vehicles, highest dollar figures on a vehicle, whatever you want to filter out in that report. So,
Beautiful.
yeah, so obviously developing that portion of the vehicle maintenance. Next item I wanted to share with you, we did receive a letter from the planning board in regards to the town hall infrastructure improvement project. That letter stated that because of the nature of the construction of the new elevator at the town hall does not fall under planning. It is, falls under ADA accessibility, so there's no additional parking requirements going to be attached to that project.
Yeah,
So-
I read that email.
yeah,
Yep.
so that's, project's looking good. I don't see any things that are gonna inhibit, I guess, that moving forward unless obviously the money isn't there, so looking forward to meeting with Capital and
The
seeing
money
how we're
is a
gonna move forward.
big driving factor.
Anything scheduled yet for capital, community capital?
Not
We have
yet,
not
no,
yet.
no.
I think even when we met with appropriations last week, they said that they had not yet met with capital, so
Yeah,
there's been no scheduled dates yet.
right. I know Capital's meeting tonight, so I'm assuming we're gonna start reaching out to each department, hopefully shortly. So to back it up a little bit, just to talk to the board about what's going on within the other departments, we have been out there doing asphalt milling. We did some milling on Maple Shade Avenue, out on Porter Road, in numerous areas out in Porter Road, past near the Wilbraham line. We've been kind of potholes and actually milling, and everybody's kind of trying to keep on the pavement to get the roads in the best shape, obviously before the plants close.
Yeah, I saw those things going on. Looked like you got
So
quite a
we
bit
know
of
Lane is
takeout.
closed, we're waiting for Palmer to close, I believe maybe the end of next
End of
week,
next week is
so
what they're indicating. Yeah.
I wish we had a few days this week. I know it's gonna rain tomorrow and more than likely Wednesday. We are almost there, we could do a little bit more, so hopefully the weather turns out better, so we can keep moving. Another item is the Millbrook Water Main Replacement Project. I know John touched on it last week. All the areas have been paved, the place is in pretty good shape. We'll probably be out there tomorrow removing all the water pipe off the job site, all the dig boxes, getting all the pipes stored away that we don't need out there. So that place should be set for the winter time anyways. We did get a couple services in since our last meeting, but I believe there's probably about 10 left to do. We can wait. We do have to go back and throw some loam on some of the settled trench areas in the lawns themselves where the services are. Probably not going to seed them, but we did get some calls that we do have some settlements, so hopefully get that towards the end of the week.
That's good.
We are looking to at molding the services, that, particularly the long services that go all the way across the roadway. So if we get some breaks in the weather where we can get and open up the tree belt on both sides of the road, we
Yep.
can get right across the roadway without
Yep.
impacting us in the winter.
Yeah, yeah, we did receive that last week, that
Good.
new mowing tool, so it's good stuff. That's all I have.
Sounds good, and any other businesses?
How are we doing with backflow inspections?
Right on top, we're just about done, I believe.
Yeah, I had
Mark's
that,
got
I
some
had
more
that
tomorrow?
conversation with,
Yeah.
Yep.
with Mr. Langoni
Yeah,
last
we have,
week.
depending on the type of device, actually, what we've done this year is we have surveyed about 50%. And part of what we have to do on a 5-year basis is actually go through and survey facilities looking for where backflow preventers are needed. Secondarily, we have to, once there are backflow preventers, we have to test them and certify them. And depending on the type of device, some devices are done twice per year, some are done once per year. And we are finalizing the last round of the second of the RP devices that have to be done twice a year. One thing that's been a big help there is that we, and Shirley can speak to this to a greater extent, but we have been doing a lot of the scheduling, a lot of the telephone calling using administrative staff. So that greatly frees up Mark's time. He can focus on just doing what he needs to do and not spending a lot of time scheduling and phone calling, and it seems to have worked out very well.
Yes, it has.
Any problems out there? Do you find anything that?
Nothing major. You know, you always find some devices, you always find some things that shouldn't need to be improved, and when you do so, you call attention to them and make certain they get correct.
Good.
Sounds good, and we've already scheduled the next meeting for December 22nd at 5 PM.
Yep, motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.